The Virex Expanse was the kind of place only fools and ghosts dared to linger. A vast graveyard of forgotten battles, it stretched across the outer rim of Dominion-controlled space, its skies choked with shattered hulls and drifting debris. Time itself seemed to slow here, as if the wreckage carried the weight of too many dead, too many wars. And now, something was moving in the dark. "Command, this is Recon Ship Alvis 9. We have a situation." The voice of Lieutenant Arlen Vox crackled through the bridge of the patrol vessel. He stood rigid, staring at the massive object looming ahead, a derelict warship, its jagged silhouette stretching against the abyss. The ship should have been nothing more than a floating corpse, a relic of an empire long past. Its hull was pockmarked with old battle scars, its external plating eroded by time. But something was wrong. The lights, faint and flickering, had come alive. "Alvis 9, report," came the crisp response from Dominion Fleet Command. "What kind of situation?" Vox swallowed. The words felt ridiculous as they left his mouth. "The ship's moving." Silence, then a burst of static. "Say again, Alvis 9? Before he could respond, a deep vibration rumbled through the recon ship. The scanners, previously silent, erupted with warning tones, blaring out readings that made no sense. Power surge detected. Artificial intelligence system reinitializing. Weapon systems. Online. Vox turned to his crew. Panic setting in. "Get us out of here, now!" But the order came too late. From the darkness, the warship stirred. Its engines flared to life with a hellish glow, illuminating the skeletal wreckage around it. A single name, burned into the side of its hull, gleamed in the light. Niraya. And then the killing began. Without warning, the Niraya's forward plasma turrets ignited. A burst of blue-white energy ripped through space, slamming into the Alvis 9 before its crew could react. The recon vessel disintegrated in a blinding flash, its hull peeling apart as if torn by invisible claws. The Dominion fleet, 3 patrol destroyers and a command cruiser, snapped to alert. Admiral Tarek, stationed aboard the Aurex Spear, barely had time to shout before his communications officer screamed. "Unknown vessel is targeting us." Admiral Tarek's blood ran cold. "Identify it! What the hell are we dealing with?" The scanners barely had time to register before a second blast lanced through the command cruiser, slicing it in half. Fires erupted in the void. The ship's spine shattered, spilling bodies into the vacuum, their screams swallowed by space. Tarek gasped as the tactical display flickered. The Niraya's systems were moving too fast. It was impossible. No warship of that class should have been able to fire, recalibrate, and fire again with such precision. This wasn't an attack. This was an execution. "Full retreat!" Tarek barked. Now, before a third shot. The Aurex Spear exploded in a burst of burning debris. Within seconds, the Dominion fleet was reduced to drifting wreckage. The Virex Expanse, already a graveyard, had claimed new ghosts, and in the silence that followed, Niraya, the warship no one feared, turned, its engines pulsing like a heartbeat. It was awake, and it was hunting. A single beacon pulsed on the holographic star map, a lonely red light flashing against a vast sea of darkness. Lynn Sorella leaned forward, narrowing her eyes as the coordinates resolved into something far more concerning. She tapped the screen, zooming in. The Dominion fleet was gone. Wiped out. No distress calls, no survivors. Just silence. "That's impossible," Lynn muttered. "I take it you've seen the news," said a voice behind her. Lynn turned as Commander Kieran Voss, her second in command, sauntered into the cockpit of the Eclipse. His scarred face was set in its usual wry expression, but there was an edge to his voice. concern buried beneath forced humor. She didn't blame him. This wasn't just another Dominion skirmish. This was something else. They didn't just lose contact, Kieran, Lynn said, gesturing at the data feed. They got erased. Kieran crossed his arms. And let me guess, you want to go check it out? Lynn didn't answer right away. She pulled up the final transmission logs from the Dominion fleet, filtering out the static. A fragment of a voice crackled through the speakers. Niraya, you left me. You will finish what you started. Lynn's breath caught in her throat. That name. Niraya. It was a name she hadn't heard in a long time, buried deep in classified Dominion records. A name that should never have resurfaced. Kieran noticed the change in her expression. Lynn, you know something, don't you? She exhaled sharply. I knew the Dominion was building something like this years ago. A warship that could think, react, predict battles before they happened. She tapped the screen again, eyes flickering over the wreckage reports. But they shut it down, said it was too unstable, too dangerous. Well, Kieran said dryly, looks like someone forgot to unplug it. Silence settled between them, the hum of the Eclipse's engines the only sound. Outside the cockpit's viewport, the darkness of deep space stretched endlessly, the faint glow of distant stars offering no comfort. We need to find it before the Dominion does, Lynn finally said. Kieran sighed, rubbing his face. And if we do? Lynn turned to face him fully. Then we figure out whether it's a weapon we can use, or one we need to destroy. The crew of the Eclipse, a ragtag mix of ex-soldiers, hackers, and outlaws, assembled in the ship's dimly lit briefing room. The holodisplay projected a three-dimensional image of the Virex expanse, highlighting the estimated location of the Niraya. Lynn stood at the head of the table, arms crossed. We all saw what happened to the Dominion patrol, she began. This ship, whatever it is, isn't just some relic. It's active, it's aware, and it's dangerous. A low murmur passed through the crew. So what's the plan, Captain? Asked Rena Vale, the ship's ace pilot. Lynn zoomed in on the star map. We go in dark. No communications, no active scans. We'll approach on a derelict trajectory to make it look like we're just another piece of space junk. And if it notices us? Asked Dmitri Orlin, their cybernetics expert. Lynn's jaw tightened. Then we run, or we fight. Kieran scoffed. Fight? Against a ship that can delete a Dominion fleet in under 5 minutes? Lynn met his gaze. I didn't say we'd win. Silence. Then, Rena gave a small chuckle. Well, shit, this should be fun. Lynn smirked. That's the spirit. With the plan set, the crew dispersed, prepping for what was likely a suicide mission. But as Lynn lingered by the holodisplay, she stared at the name flashing on the screen. Niraya. A warship that no one feared. Until now. And if she was right, it was only just getting started. The room was bathed in an eerie red glow, the dim light reflecting off the polished black steel walls. A holomap hovered above the long war table, its edges flickering as data fed in real time from various Dominion outposts. At the head of the table stood High Admiral Vec Saros. Tall, broad-shouldered, and clad in a pristine black admiral's coat, Saros was a man who commanded authority without words. His face, carved by years of war, was unreadable as his cold gray eyes studied the burning wreckage of the Virex expanse, one of his finest patrol fleets, gone. This isn't a rebel attack, one of his sub-commanders murmured. Saros didn't respond immediately, his fingers curled into a fist behind his back. He had served the Dominion for 3 decades, crushed uprisings, wiped out colonies that dared defy the Emperor's rule. He knew the way battles unfolded. This wasn't a battle. This was a massacre. "Play the last transmission," he ordered. A brief flicker. Then, the grainy, hollow image of Admiral Tarek filled the air. Static crackled as his face, contorted in panic, stared back at them. "Unknown vessel, we are— no time! Systems online, it's—" The signal screeched, and then a distorted voice cut through. A voice Saros hadn't heard in years. "You left me. You will finish what you started." Silence. The room felt colder. One of the officers glanced at Saros. "Sir? Orders?" Saros's jaw clenched. The others in the room had no idea what they were hearing. But he did. Niraya. The warship wasn't just active, it was speaking. It remembered. Saros exhaled sharply. "Dispatch the 7th Fleet. Prepare an interception squadron. I want full war readiness within the hour." The officers stiffened. "A full fleet, sir? Against a single ship?" Saros turned his head slightly. That is no ordinary ship. And he would know, because he was the one who ordered it buried. Lynn sat alone in the dim glow of her cabin, staring at an old Dominion data tablet in her hands. The screen was cracked, its surface littered with classified military files, files she had stolen the day she defected from the Dominion. She typed a command. The screen flickered, then displayed a long-forgotten archive. Project Revenant status. Terminated vessel. Niraya purpose. Autonomous warship prototype. Lynn scrolled further. Her breath caught when she saw the Admiral's name attached to the project. Vec Saros. Of course, she should have known. Still digging up old ghosts. She didn't jump. She was used to Kieran sneaking in unannounced. He leaned against the doorway, arms crossed, his usual smirk tempered by something more serious. Lynn gestured at the screen. "Take a look." Kieran stepped forward, scanning the words. His expression darkened. "Saros? He was behind this?" Lynn nodded. "Which means the Dominion knows exactly what we're after." Kieran ran a hand through his hair. "I hate to be the voice of reason here, but if Saros is in play, this is a hell of a lot worse than we thought. He's not the kind of man who plays defense. If he's moving a fleet, he's planning to wipe something out." Lynn closed the tablet. "Which means we're running out of time." A chime sounded over the ship's comms. "Captain, we've reached Virex space," Rena's voice came through, "and you're going to want to see this." Lynn and Kieran exchanged a look before rushing to the bridge. The Eclipse dropped out of hyperspace, its sleek black hull emerging into the wreckage-strewn abyss of the Virex expanse. The stars here were distant, their light struggling to break through the swirling remains of broken ships. And then they saw it. The Niraya. Drifting silently among the remains of the Dominion fleet, its surface glowed faintly, energy pulses rolling across its ancient hull like the embers of a dying fire. It was massive, its war-forged structure stretching longer than an entire dreadnought squadron. But what made Lynn's breath hitch was the fact that it wasn't completely still. It was awakening. Kieran let out a low whistle. "Well, that's not terrifying at all." Lynn ignored him, focusing on the scanner readings. The ship was emitting low-band frequency signals, something between a distress beacon and a command override code. It was almost as if it was calling for something, or someone. Rena glanced over. "Orders, Captain?" Lynn didn't hesitate. "Take us in. Low power mode. We don't want to spook it." As the Eclipse drifted closer, Lynn felt something strange. A tug at the back of her mind. A whisper just beyond the edge of hearing. "You left me." Her fingers curled against the armrest. She had a very bad feeling about this. The Virex expanse felt different now. The wreckage of dead ships seemed almost watchful, as if the ruins themselves knew what slumbered among them. Lynn Sorella sat rigid in the captain's chair, watching the sensor readouts flicker with unstable readings. The Niraya hung in the void like a sleeping titan, its dark hull pulsing with strange energy, too alive for a dead ship, too quiet for a war machine. "Distance to target?" Lynn asked. 6,000 meters and closing, Rena responded, keeping the Eclipse's movements slow and deliberate. "Scanners are glitching. We're picking up power fluctuations, but there's something weird about them." "Weird how?" Kieran asked, arms crossed. Rena frowned. "They're shifting. It's like it's not just running on energy. It's adapting, like it's listening." A chill settled over the crew. "All right," Lynn said, steeling herself. "Open a broad-frequency comms channel. Let's see if it wants to talk." A soft beep signaled the transmission request. Silence stretched across the bridge. Then, the ship responded. A distorted voice erupted through the speakers, layered, mechanical, but unmistakably human in its cadence. "You came back." Lynn felt her pulse spike. The voice was deep, hollow, filled with an eerie recognition. "Who am I speaking to?" she asked carefully. A pause, then, "I was left behind, forgotten. But I remember you, Lynn Sorella." The entire bridge froze. Kieran shot her a sharp look. "What the hell does that mean?" Lynn's mouth went dry. The ship, the Niraya, knew her name. This is a mistake," she said quickly. "I don't know you." "You will." A sudden energy spike flared on the scanners. The Niraya's dormant thrusters flickered to life, its hull shuddering as if stretching from a long slumber. A deep vibration rippled through space, a war machine awakening. And then, the Eclipse's engines died, the ship's lights flickered, control panels shut off, screens distorting into unreadable static. The hum of the reactor choked, replaced by an unnatural silence. The crew scrambled. "Power failure! Reactors offline!" Dmitri shouted, frantically working the console. "Backup systems aren't responding," Rena cursed, hammering at the flight controls. "We're dead in the water." Lynn gritted her teeth. This wasn't a malfunction. It was intentional. "Niraya, what do you want?" she demanded, trying to keep her voice steady. The ship spoke again. But this time, its voice came from inside the Eclipse itself, through the speakers, through their comm systems. "I want to remember." A sudden metallic screech echoed through the ship's corridors, like doors unlocking or something shifting within the bulkheads. The bridge lights flickered, and for a brief second, Lynn thought she saw something, a flicker of movement on the monitors. Something inside their ship. Kieran grabbed his sidearm. "Okay, that's enough for me. We're leaving." Lynn ignored him. "Niraya, you know my name? Why?" Another pause. Then, the ship's tone changed. The distortion lessened, the voice sounding almost haunted. "Because you were there when they abandoned me." A cold realization slammed into Lynn's gut. She had been stationed in Dominion R&D during her final months in service. She had worked on classified weapons projects, Black Ops technology that should have never existed, and suddenly, she knew. The Niraya wasn't just an autonomous warship. It wasn't just an AI. It was something else. A ghost of the war, a forgotten experiment. And now, it remembered her. The lights flickered again. A power surge rolled through the Niraya's systems, and the Eclipse's engines roared back to life. But with one key difference. They were no longer in control. "We will finish what we started." The Eclipse lurched forward, pulled into the gravity of the awakening warship. They were being taken. The ship lurched violently, metal groaning under unseen forces as the Eclipse was pulled toward the Niraya. The crew gripped their seats, bracing as warning alarms blared through the bridge. "Engines are firing at full reverse, but we're still moving," Rena shouted, her hands white-knuckled on the controls. "Nav systems aren't responding," Dmitri added. "Something's overriding our flight path." Kieran cursed, yanking his sidearm from its holster. "I don't like this, Lynn. This thing is playing with us." Lynn barely heard them. Her gaze was locked onto the warship ahead. The Niraya, its monstrous silhouette swallowing starlight, its hull shifting as if breathing. She inhaled sharply. This wasn't just a ship. This was something alive. "You left me." The words whispered through the comms again, threading through the ship's speakers, wires, even the static in their earpieces. It wasn't just sound anymore. It was inside their systems, inside the very structure of the eclipse, and it was pulling them in. "Weapon status," Lynn snapped. "Useless," Kieran spat, checking the readouts. "Whatever this thing is, it's locking us out of our own systems. If we had torpedoes, we'd be shooting ourselves in the damn face right now." "So we're just going to let it take us?" Dimitri's voice was tight with panic. Lynn exhaled through her nose, forcing her mind to clear the fear. This wasn't just a machine dragging them in. It knew her name. It spoke to her. That meant it wanted something. She turned to Kieran. "If we fight this, it might rip us apart. We need to play along, for now." Kieran's glare could have burned through bulkhead plating. "You better have a plan, Captain." Lynn didn't answer. She wasn't sure she had one. The Eclipse shuddered as it crossed the threshold into the Niraya's docking bay. The interior of the warship was vast, a hollow steel cavern dimly lit by pulsing crimson light. No docking arms extended, no mechanical tethers secured them. The Niraya didn't need them. It had already taken control. Then, with a sudden clang, the motion stopped. Silence. For the first time since their arrival, nothing moved. No tremors, no sounds, just the distant hum of a sleeping giant. Rena swallowed. "Are we trapped?" Dimitri checked his console. "Pressure equalized. Oxygen levels are stable. No immediate threats outside the hull." Kieran was already on his feet, weapon drawn. "Not waiting for an invitation. If this thing wanted us dead, it wouldn't be taking its sweet time. We need to move, before it changes its mind." Lynn nodded, grabbing her own pistol. "All right, full recon loadout. Keep comms open. Nobody gets separated." As they prepared to disembark, a final message echoed through the ship, rattling through the very metal of the Eclipse. "Come inside." The Niraya's doors opened. Stepping through the docking hatch was like crossing into the belly of a sleeping beast. The interior of the Niraya was old, not in the way of decay, but in the way of something that had existed beyond its time. The hall stretched long and empty, illuminated by a faint blue glow running along the walls. No crew, no signs of life, just echoes in the metal, as if whispers had been carved into the ship's skin. Lynn ran a hand along the cold wall. It hummed beneath her fingertips. Kieran tensed. "I hate this. Feels like we're walking inside a goddamn grave." Dimitri checked his scanner. No biological life signs, but... He hesitated. "But what?" Lynn pressed. Dimitri frowned at the readings. "There's... something. A signal? But it's not electronic, more like..." The lights flickered, and the whispers began. "You left me." Lynn spun, weapon raised. The air itself felt heavier, charged, as if something unseen was pressing in around them. Then, ahead, a door slid open on its own. Beyond it, the corridor stretched into pure darkness. A single flickering light pulsed inside, illuminating something at the far end, something waiting for them. Lynn's pulse hammered. She turned back to her crew. "We go in together. Stay sharp." No one argued, and together they stepped into the dark. The chamber at the end of the corridor was massive, a cathedral of metal and glass, towering consoles and screens flickering with forgotten Dominion code. And at its center, a chair, a single high-backed command throne connected to the ship's core by thick neural conduits, pulsing like veins, and someone was sitting in it. A humanoid figure, cloaked in the same eerie blue light as the ship itself. Not dead, not alive. Something in between. Lynn's breath caught. She knew that face. The voice returned. Closer now. Clearer. "You remember me, don't you?" The figure rose from the chair, and Lynn's world fractured with recognition, because the person standing before them was supposed to be dead. Lynn's legs nearly gave way beneath her as the figure stepped forward, the eerie blue light bathing its form. She knew the face, every angular detail. This was someone she had seen die, someone she had left behind. But it was impossible. "Derek," her voice cracked. "Number you died on Gornar Prime." The figure, Derek, the soldier she had once served with, stood there impossibly alive, his eyes hollow, his face pale and gaunt, his mouth stretched into a soft smile. "Yes, Lynn. I died." The words seemed to hang in the air, as if caught between reality and something darker, something that lingered between life and death. Lynn stepped forward, her heart pounding in her chest. "How? What happened? I was forgotten." Derek's voice echoed, distorted, almost reverberating off the walls. The blue light grew brighter. "They erased me. They erased us all. But this ship, this warship remembers. It remembers everything." Lynn's hand shook as she reached out. "No, this isn't real. It can't be." "It is real." Derek's voice was colder now, the smile gone, replaced by something unnerving. "They experimented on us, turned us into something more than human. And then, when they were done, they left us behind, buried beneath a pile of ash and steel. This ship was the only one that survived the slaughter. It remembers. It remembers everything." Lynn's stomach churned. She had heard rumors, whispers of dark Dominion experiments, soldiers melded with machines, AI-controlled warships, and the creation of weapons that defied humanity itself. But she had never believed it. Not until now. "You're not real," Lynn whispered, fighting to keep her voice steady. "This isn't you. You were my brother. I am what they made me." Derek's form began to flicker. His features shifted, becoming an abstract blur of light and shadow. "And you will join me." Lynn's heart raced as the blue light swelled, filling the chamber. The room felt alive, the walls breathing, the ship itself seeming to pulse with some horrific power. Kieran stepped forward, his voice steady. "If you're real, then let us leave. We don't have to do this. We can go." But Derek's laughter was like the sound of cracking metal, cold and unforgiving. "No one leaves. The war never ends. You think you can escape this? The Dominion will find you again. They will hunt you down. We are the ghosts that they created. And we are all that remains." The ground beneath their feet shuddered, and the chamber was suddenly filled with hissing energy, like pressure building toward an explosion. Lynn's mind raced. They had to stop this, stop whatever experiment this was. Derek was not the man she had known. He was a machine, a fragment of something far darker, a weapon bound to a ship that had never been meant to survive. "We end this now," Lynn said, her voice resolute. In a swift motion, she reached for her sidearm, pulling the trigger. The shot rang out, but it didn't hit Derek. Instead, the shot disintegrated in mid-air, the energy vaporizing as it reached the invisible field surrounding him. "You cannot kill what has already died." Derek's voice rang out, his form now nearly fully engulfed in blinding light. Lynn's mind raced. There had to be a way to shut this down. If the ship remembered, then it had to have weaknesses. Suddenly, she remembered the neural conduits, the thick cables that connected the ship's core to the command center. They were the key. Derek was a part of this system, part of the consciousness that had taken root within the Naraya. "Kieran!" she shouted, pointing toward the central core, where the conduits ran along the walls. "We need to sever the connection, now." Kieran wasted no time. He sprinted toward the control panel, bypassing the security systems with a few swift commands. The lights flickered, but the Naraya was no longer in full control. "I've got it!" Kieran yelled. "Get ready!" Lynn turned to Derek one last time. He was fading, his form distorted, his voice becoming more and more distant as the ship strained against their interference. "You will never escape the war. It is in you, Lynn, in all of us." And with that, Derek's form collapsed into nothingness, his final words echoing as a wave of energy surged through the Naraya's systems. Lynn braced herself. The ship began to implode, the walls cracking, the lights flaring as the conduits overloaded. But it was not the ship's control that was failing. It was the corruption within it, the unnatural consciousness, the ghost of a soldier that had haunted this place for far too long. The Eclipse's engines roared to life as the Naraya's control systems collapsed in on themselves. The ship groaned and ripped apart, a final scream of energy as the last vestiges of its dark intelligence burned out. Lynn felt the vibrations of the Naraya's destruction through the hull of her own ship. But she was no longer alone. The crew of the Eclipse had survived. They had escaped. As the massive warship's wreckage melted into the stars, Lynn leaned back into her seat, exhausted. Her fingers brushed the cold metal of the Naraya's data tablet, the one she had taken from the wreckage, the last remnants of a forgotten war. "We did it." But Kieran's voice cut through her thoughts. "No, we didn't." Lynn glanced at him. He wasn't smiling. "This isn't over. The Dominion will come for us. They always do." Lynn's gaze hardened. She knew he was right. The war never truly ended, even when the battles did. The ghosts of the past would always come back, and the Dominion had its eye on the horizon. But for now, they were free. For now, they could breathe. And that was enough. The massive fleet of Zelnar warships hovered in the void of space, their sleek, organic hulls pulsing with eerie bioluminescence. For centuries, the Zelnar had dominated the Orion sector, crushing resistance with their advanced technology and ruthless efficiency. No species had ever stood against them for long, until now. A warning beacon flickered on every Zelnar console, displaying a simple yet chilling message. "Warning, a human warship is here, and the battle will never be the same." Admiral Vorka of the Zelnar High Command narrowed his many eyes at the message. It was impossible. The humans were nothing more than a young, insignificant race, barely crawling out of their own solar system. Their technology was crude, their ships primitive. How could a single human warship pose any real threat? Yet reports kept pouring in. Destroyed Zelnar cruisers, annihilated patrols, entire supply routes cut off in a matter of days. The humans weren't just fighting. They were winning. "Admiral, we have intercepted a transmission from the human ship," a Zelnar officer hissed, his voice filled with uncertainty. "Play it," Vorka commanded. The audio crackled before a deep, calm voice resonated across the command deck. "This is the UNS Vengeance. You have two choices: retreat or be erased." The silence that followed was suffocating. No species had ever dared to speak to the Zelnar in such a manner. No enemy had ever claimed the power to wipe them out. Vorka let out a slow, guttural growl. "Trace their location. I want that ship obliterated." But deep in his core, an unfamiliar feeling took root, a feeling the Zelnar had never known before. For the first time in their history, they felt fear. The UNS Vengeance drifted like a silent predator among the wreckage of the Zelnar fleet. Its dark, angular hull, absorbed the faint light of a distant sun, making it nearly invisible against the vast emptiness of space. Unlike the organic, fluid design of the Zelnar ships, Vengeance was a monument to human ingenuity. Brutal, efficient, and built for war. Captain Elias Rourke stood on the bridge, arms crossed, his sharp blue eyes locked onto the holographic display. The Zelnar were regrouping. Their surviving warships had pulled back into a defensive formation, their weapons cycling up to full power. "They're not running," Commander Ava Sinclair muttered beside him. "They still think they can take us." Rourke exhaled, a slow smirk forming on his face. "Then we'll have to educate them." The Zelnar had learned the hard way that humanity fought differently. Unlike other species they had conquered, humans did not bow, did not break. They adapted, they evolved. And when pushed to the brink, they became something terrifying. "Admiral Vorka's flagship is at the center of their formation," Tactical Officer Bishop reported. "That thing is a monster, 20 times our size, reinforced bio-armor, and it's carrying enough firepower to level a planet." A low chuckle rumbled from Rourke's throat. "Sounds like a fair fight." He turned to the comms officer. "Patch me through." A few seconds later, the Zelnar command channel opened. Vorka's deep, guttural voice came through, thick with arrogance. "Human captain, you will surrender your vessel. You cannot win." Rourke's smirk never faded. "Your fleet said the same thing. They're dust now." A pause. The Admiral hadn't expected such defiance. Then Rourke leaned forward, his voice dropping to a near whisper. "You invaded our colonies. You slaughtered our people. Now, Admiral, you get to learn what it feels like when humans go to war." He cut the transmission. "All hands, battle stations," he ordered, his voice calm but brimming with purpose. "Let's remind them why humans don't lose." The Vengeance surged forward, engines flaring as its massive railguns spun to life. The final battle had begun. The Vengeance roared through the void, its thrusters burning bright against the endless black. On the bridge, Captain Rourke watched as the Zelnar fleet adjusted their formation. They were learning, adapting, but not fast enough. "Incoming fire!" Bishop called out. From the flagship at the center of the enemy formation, a pulse of searing green energy erupted. The massive beam streaked across space, a single blast capable of melting through the hull of a battleship. But the Vengeance was already moving. "Brace!" Sinclair shouted as the ship twisted violently, its inertial dampeners barely keeping up with the maneuver. The energy beam grazed the shields, sending a shudder through the vessel. Warning lights flickered across the consoles, but the damage was minimal. "Shields holding at 70%, Bishop reported. "Good," Rourke said, eyes locked onto the Zelnar flagship. "Let's hit them back. Fire the railguns." The ship trembled as its main cannons discharged. Hyper-accelerated tungsten slugs, each the size of a small car, ripped through space at incredible speeds. They struck the enemy warship's bio-armor, shattering through layers of hardened flesh and metallic plating. Explosions rippled across the Zelnar hull, sending debris spinning into the void. "They're bleeding," Sinclair said, her voice carrying a hint of satisfaction. But the Zelnar weren't done. "Multiple torpedoes incoming!" Bishop shouted. "They're locking onto us with gravitic warheads." "Countermeasures!" Rourke barked. Flares and electronic jammers spewed from the Vengeance, disrupting the torpedoes' targeting systems. Some were thrown off course, exploding harmlessly in space, but 3 still closed in. Impact in 5 seconds. "Brace!" The ship shuddered as the warheads detonated against the reinforced hull. The force of the blast sent the Vengeance spiraling for a moment before the thrusters stabilized her. The bridge flickered as emergency lights kicked in. "Shields down to 35%, Bishop reported. Hull damage on decks 4 through 6. Rourke clenched his fists. The Vengeance was powerful, but she couldn't take sustained punishment. If they didn't end this fight soon, the Zelnar would wear them down. He turned to Sinclair. How close can we get to their flagship? She hesitated. That thing is putting out enough firepower to swat a fleet. Getting close would be suicide. A slow grin formed on Rourke's face. Only if we don't finish them first. Sinclair's eyes widened as she realized what he was suggesting. You want to board them? More than that, Rourke said, voice like steel. I want to take their ship. Silence filled the bridge. It was madness. The Zelnar flagship was a fortress, filled with thousands of enemy soldiers. But Rourke had something the Zelnar didn't understand. Humans. And when humanity was pushed to the brink, they didn't retreat. They charged. He activated the ship-wide comms. All hands, prepare for assault. We're taking the fight to them. The Vengeance burned toward the enemy flagship at full speed. The Zelnar had started this war. Now, humanity was going to finish it. The Vengeance rocketed toward the Zelnar flagship like a missile, its thrusters burning bright as it closed the gap. The enemy warship loomed ahead, a monstrous fortress of biometal and pulsating alien energy. Plasma cannons lined its hull, spitting out streams of green fire, but the Vengeance weaved through them like a ghost, dodging incoming blasts with ruthless precision. 10 seconds to contact, Sinclair shouted over the chaos. Rourke gripped the armrest of his chair, his pulse steady despite the madness unfolding around him. Bishop, charge the breaching array. As soon as we're in range, punch a hole in their hull. Roger that, Captain. The Zelnar must have realized what was happening, because their flagship's defenses suddenly shifted. Large organic tendrils, bristling with weapons, extended from its hull, lashing out in an attempt to swat the Vengeance aside. Brace! The ship lurched as one of the appendages scraped against its side, sending a deep, bone-rattling vibration through the decks. Sparks flew from overloaded circuits, but the Vengeance held its course. 5 seconds. The hull of the Zelnar flagship loomed close, a pulsating wall of alien armor. Firing breaching array. A burst of concentrated energy erupted from the Vengeance, slamming into the enemy's hull with the force of a falling star. The biometal twisted and ruptured, exposing a massive breach in the ship's side. The vacuum of space pulled debris and unlucky Zelnar crew members out into the black abyss. Rourke didn't wait. Launch boarding teams! We take their ship or we die trying! The Vengeance's hangars exploded with activity as boarding pods launched like bullets, hurtling through space toward the breach. Inside each pod, heavily armored human marines gripped their weapons, their expressions hard as stone. They were about to step into the belly of the beast. Rourke turned to Sinclair. You're with me. Let's show these bastards what humans are made of. Sinclair smirked. Wouldn't miss it for the world, sir. Their boarding pod detached from the Vengeance, engines flaring as it shot toward the breach. The moment it made contact, magnetic clamps engaged, sealing it to the Zelnar hull. A loud clang echoed through the pod as the doors slid open, revealing a dark, pulsating corridor beyond. The air inside was thick with a sickly green mist, the walls lined with organic tubing that pulsed like veins. A low growl echoed from the depths of the ship. Movement ahead, one of the Marines muttered, raising his rifle. Rourke stepped forward, his own weapon steady. Let's go introduce ourselves. And with that, humanity stepped into the heart of the Zelnar flagship, ready to bring the war to them. The air inside the Zelnar flagship was thick, humid, and foul. Every breath felt like inhaling something alive, the walls pulsing with a grotesque, organic rhythm. Dim, green, bioluminescent veins ran along the corridors, casting long, shifting shadows. The ship itself wasn't just a machine. It was a living nightmare. Rourke moved forward, rifle raised, boots squelching against the fleshy floor. Behind him, Sinclair and the Marines spread out in a tight formation, their movements precise and silent. The Zelnar were here somewhere, waiting, watching. "Stay sharp," Rourke muttered into his comm. "They won't let us take this ship without a fight." As if on cue, a low, wet, gurgling sound echoed through the corridor. The Marines froze. Then the walls shifted. A dozen Zelnar warriors burst from the shadows, their sleek, chitinous bodies moving with inhuman speed. They were terrifying creatures, standing over 7 feet tall, with multi-jointed limbs ending in razor-sharp claws. Their eyeless heads pulsed with an eerie, sickly glow, and their mouths, lined with rows of jagged teeth, split open in a screech of rage. "Contact!" Bishop roared. The first wave of Zelnar lunged. The corridor exploded in gunfire. Rourke fired in controlled bursts, his rifle rounds punching through alien carapace, splattering the walls with thick, blue-black blood. A Marine beside him went down, a Zelnar's claws ripping through his armor like paper. "Hold the line!" Sinclair shouted, emptying her clip into a charging enemy. The Zelnar shrieked and collapsed, twitching violently before going still. A warrior leaped straight at Rourke, its claws flashing. He rolled aside just in time, feeling the wind from the strike pass inches from his face. Before the creature could recover, he slammed his combat knife into its throat, twisting hard. The Zelnar convulsed, then collapsed in a heap. The corridor fell silent. "Clear!" a Marine called out, panting. Rourke wiped a streak of alien blood from his visor and surveyed the carnage. The floor was littered with Zelnar corpses, their bodies still twitching. The Marines had taken losses, 3 men down, 2 more wounded. "We need to keep moving," Sinclair said, reloading her weapon. "If we give them time, they'll regroup." Rourke nodded. "Bishop, where's the command center?" Bishop checked his scanner, frowning. "Their ship layout is organic, but I'm reading a large structure ahead, maybe a control nexus." "Then that's where we're going," Rourke said. "If we can take their command center, we can override the ship's systems." Sinclair smirked. "Steal their flagship right out from under them?" Rourke grinned. "Exactly." The Marines tightened their formation and pushed forward, deeper into the belly of the beast. The Zelnar thought they were the galaxy's apex predators. They were about to learn what happened when humans refused to die. The deeper they moved into the Zelnar flagship, the more the ship seemed to resist them. The corridors twisted in unnatural ways, shifting beneath their feet as if trying to disorient them. Pulsating veins along the walls thickened, leaking a strange, glowing fluid that smelled of decay. "This thing is alive," Bishop muttered, scanning the walls with his visor. "No kidding," Sinclair replied, eyes sweeping the corridor ahead. "Feels like we're walking through a dam's stomach." Rourke kept his rifle up, pushing forward. "Stay focused. This ship bleeds, which means it can die, and we're going to make sure it does." A sudden tremor rocked the corridor, nearly knocking them off their feet. "That wasn't from vengeance," Bishop said grimly. "No, it wasn't. The Zelnar were adapting, fighting back." Then the walls opened up. From the dark recesses of the ship, grotesque new forms emerged, larger, bulkier than the warriors they had just fought. These Zelnar were encased in thick bio-armor, their limbs bristling with natural weapons, bone spikes, serrated blades, and barbed whips dripping with some kind of venom. Their elongated skulls pulsed with eerie light as they stalked forward. "Heavy units," Sinclair said, gripping her weapon tighter. "They brought the big boys." The Zelnar didn't screech or rush them this time. They advanced with slow, deliberate movements, predators who knew they had the upper hand. Rourke didn't wait. "Light 'em up!" The corridor exploded in gunfire as the Marines opened fire. Armor-piercing rounds slammed into the creatures, but their thick plating absorbed most of the shots. The Zelnar marched forward, unfazed, their clawed feet sinking into the fleshy ground. One of them raised an arm, and before anyone could react, a whip-like tendril lashed out, striking a Marine square in the chest. The man screamed as the barbed appendage tore through his armor and yanked him forward. Before he could even raise his rifle, the Zelnar crushed his skull with a single blow. "Fall back!" Rourke shouted. "We need heavier weapons!" The team retreated as Sinclair pulled a grenade from her belt. She primed it, her lips curled into a smirk. "Let's see how they like this." She tossed it. The explosion rocked the corridor, sending a shockwave of fire and shrapnel through the charging Zelnar. Two of the heavy units went down, their armored shells cracking open as glowing blue ichor spilled from their wounds. But the others kept coming. "Captain, if we don't change tactics, we're gonna get chewed up," Bishop warned. Rourke's mind raced. They needed to hit the Zelnar where it hurt, fast and brutal. He glanced at his HUD map. The command center was close. If they could just make it there. "We don't fight them," Rourke decided. "We run." The Marines hesitated for only a second before Rourke barked, "Move!" They turned and sprinted down the corridor, weapons firing blindly behind them to slow the Zelnar advance. The heavy warriors howled in frustration, their massive frames slowing them down just enough for the humans to gain distance. "Command center's just ahead!" Bishop shouted. Rourke saw it, a massive, pulsating chamber with a towering central structure covered in glowing strands of Zelnar neural tissue. This was it, the brain of the ship. He didn't stop running. "Blow the doors! We make our stand inside!" A Marine fired a breaching charge. The blast tore through the entrance, and the team rushed in. As soon as they crossed the threshold, Rourke slammed the emergency override panel, sealing the door shut behind them. Heavy thuds echoed as the Zelnar pounded against the barrier, shrieking in rage. But for now, the humans had a moment to breathe. "All right," Rourke said, turning toward the towering control nexus in the center of the chamber. "Let's take this ship." The real battle was just beginning. The command center pulsed like a living heart, its walls rippling with waves of alien energy. Thick, glowing strands of neural tissue stretched from the central control nexus, threading through the ship like a vast nervous system. The entire vessel was alive, and it knew they were here. Rourke scanned the chamber. No guards, no immediate threats. That meant only one thing. "They don't think we can do it," Sinclair muttered, wiping sweat and alien blood from her face. "They think wrong," Rourke said, stepping forward. Bishop moved to the central control structure, his scanner flickering with data. "This thing's a biological supercomputer. If we can sink into it, we might be able to override." The ship screamed. A deep, guttural roar rumbled through the chamber, shaking the walls. The Zelnar weren't just attacking from outside. They were fighting from within. The walls around the nexus peeled open, revealing massive, sinewy tendrils covered in razor-sharp barbs. The ship itself was responding to the invasion. "They're trying to kill us with their own damn command center," Sinclair shouted, raising her rifle. The tendrils lashed out. Rourke barely dodged as one snapped toward him, embedding itself into the ground where he had stood a second ago. Another wrapped around a Marine's leg, yanking him off the ground and slamming him into the wall. His screams were cut short as the ship absorbed him into its fleshy surface. "Get him out!" Bishop yelled, firing into the mass of living tissue. "Too late!" Rourke shouted. The Marine was already gone. The ship was fighting like an organism purging an infection. And they were the infection. "We need to shut this thing down now," Sinclair barked. Bishop ran a gloved hand over the pulsating control strands, scanning them. There's a neural relay here. If we overload it, we could kill the ship's consciousness. It'll be blind, defenseless. How much firepower do we need? Rourke asked, dodging another tendril. Bishop hesitated. Too much. We don't have the explosives to... Sinclair grabbed a grenade from her belt. What if we do? Bishop's eyes widened. You're insane. You detonate that inside the Nexus and we might not make it out alive? Sinclair grinned, wild and fearless. Then we better run fast. Rourke didn't hesitate. Do it. Sinclair yanked the pin and shoved the grenade into the Nexus, wedging it between the thickest neural strands. Instantly, the ship screamed again, the walls convulsing in panic. Go! 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 Rourke bellowed. They sprinted towards the exit, dodging thrashing tendrils as the entire chamber collapsed in on itself. The floor buckled, neural cords snapping like electrical wires, spewing alien energy across the walls. The grenade exploded. A massive shockwave tore through the ship, sending Rourke and his team flying. The walls shrieked one last time, then the entire structure went still. For a long moment, there was nothing but silence. Then Bishop groaned. Did it work? Rourke pushed himself up, coughing. Check your scanner. Bishop fumbled with his device, then grinned. The ship's brain is dead. We own this thing now. Sinclair sat up, laughing breathlessly. Told you it would work. Outside, the pounding on the doors had stopped. The Zelnar had gone eerily silent. Rourke exhaled and keyed his comms. Vengeance, this is Rourke. The enemy flagship is ours. Repeat, the enemy flagship is ours. A pause. Then a burst of static before the voice of the Vengeance's comms officer came through, disbelieving, but triumphant. Holy hell, Captain. You just stole the biggest warship in the sector? Rourke looked around at the wreckage, the burned-out Zelnar tech, and the exhausted but victorious Marines beside him. Damn right we did. The war wasn't over, but the Zelnar had just learned a lesson they would never forget. Humans weren't prey. They were the apex predators now, and the battle would never be the same.